Coming to get you, Bobber.
Silent Night is a 2012 horror movie directed by Stephen C. Miller, and it stars Malcolm McDowell, Jamie King and Donald Logue. This is now the Christmas period, guys, and what better movies to review than Christmas horror movies? So I'm going to be doing a bunch of Christmas horror movies over December, and they're all going to be older movies, so they're all going to contain spoilers, but as usual I will mention at the beginning of each video that this is a spoiler review. The police force of a remote Midwestern town search for a killer Santa Claus who's picking off citizens on Christmas Eve. First off, this is one of the rare occasions where I've seen the remake before the original, and when I tend to do that, I always side, well not always, but most of the time I side with the remake more because it's more up to date. I've seen it first, so that when I see an original I usually look back and go, oh, that's probably why they've done a remake, because that was very outdated. But on this occasion, I'll say this straight away, I preferred the original Silent Night, Deadly Night. This movie was really bad compared to that one, and that's hard to say because sometimes when you do a remake, even if it's not as good as the original, it's got some sort of quality over the original. But in the remake, I don't think I prefer anything over the original. The dialogue, for example, was very amateurish. It doesn't seem to be the type of movie that would have as bad a dialogue as it did, because you've got actors like Malcolm McDowell, Jamie King, albeit she's in a lot of B horror movies, but Jamie King, nonetheless, she is a good actress, and Donald Logue as well, he's a great actor. So when you've got people like this in the movie, even if it's not the best dialogue, they tend to make that a little bit better. But in this instance, the dialogue was bad, and the way they delivered it, it's almost like the actors didn't care. Something else that didn't help was the movie was filled with characters that we just didn't like, and they featured some of the worst characters of all time.
You need to take me to the mall. But I thought we'd go to church tonight. Fuck church. I want my new LV today.
You had characters that were so unbelievable that even in a movie like this, they're still unbelievable. You've got a priest, for example, who looks like some sort of rapist. I don't know, I just think that it's as if these characters were put in there just to annoy us so that we liked it when they got killed. Going back to the dialogue again, I've got a good example where we've got the sheriff of the town, played by Malcolm McDowell, who's blaming everyone for being the killer. As soon as he sees the person, he's like, yep, that's the suspect, that's definitely the killer. But then you've got Jamie King's character, who is a little bit more level-headed. She's like, okay, it could be the killer, but let's question them first of all before we start pointing fingers and guns. Although I didn't like most of the characters, and although the dialogue was terrible at times, or most of the time, the acting was okay. Especially by, I think the best actor in this film for me was Donald Logue, and he didn't have a lot of screen time, but the actors were okay considering how bad the dialogue was. For the amount of money that they probably spent on this, I think it did look kind of cheap. It looked like a movie that was straight to DVD. I'm sure this got a limited release in a lot of countries in the theatres, so it did have a theatrical release, but it didn't have a theatrical feeling to it. It did look a little bit cheap, but at the same time, although it did look cheap, I think that the feel of this was very Christmassy. It had a very Christmas look to it, because there are movies that I'll probably review later on that are set at Christmas and supposed to be Christmas movies, but they didn't have that Christmas feel, whereas Silent Night did have a Christmas feel to it. The kills were creative. There were some really gruesome kills in it. There was CGI used, and that took me out of the movie at times, but there were some practical effects as well. But overall, I enjoyed the kills because they were very creative. There was a movie back in 2004 called Walking Tall, starring The Rock, and it was about a guy who goes back to his old town, and the old mill shut down, and when the old mill shut down there was no jobs, and the place became very seedy and just overrun by crime. And it's the exact same thing that happens in Silent Night. It was almost derelict because the mill shut down and it's just overtaken by seedy people and criminals. And so when people are in this film getting chased by the killer, they're screaming for help, but there's no help. There are some bits of this town that were quite full, but most of the place was derelict, but it did remind me of Walking Tall. I think the killer was creative. I think the killer was scary as well. We didn't know who he was to the end of the movie, which was good. We didn't have any ideas of who it could be. Well, at least I didn't anyway. So I think that was pretty good. I liked the Santa Claus in this. Obviously had a flamethrower as well. That's the very first time I've seen Santa Claus with a flamethrower. So I think the Santa Claus in this was one of the best parts of the movie. For what it's worth, we also get a black Christmas tribute. I'll quickly touch on the score because there wasn't much of a score to listen to, but what I did like about the score was it was a basic Christmas album, a basic Christmas score, but this time it was distorted, so you could tell what the songs were, the old Christmas themes, but they were all distorted, and that was quite unsettling. I think this movie's biggest positive was that it didn't rely on the original, and what I mean by that is they've got a few references to the original movie and that's it.
You better watch out, boy.
What is this? Garbage day?
The whole movie felt like an entirely new movie and an entirely new plot, so I commend them for that because they didn't make it a carbon copy of Silent Night, Deadly Night. If anything, it just took its name and a few references. My biggest issue with the film though was it was cheaply made. It felt like a movie that you would accept to see direct to DVD or video on demand these days. I don't think this was a theatrical movie. It tried to be something that it's not, and I think it paid for it for that. Overall though guys, I thought it was okay. It wasn't a great movie. I would watch it again. I have seen it a couple of times, so I will probably watch it again in the future, but I won't go rushing out to see it again because it wasn't a great movie. So what are your guys' thoughts on Silent Night, and also do you prefer this one over the original from 1984? As always, leave your comments down below. Anyway guys, thanks a lot for watching again. Thanks for subscribing. I'll see you soon. Bye bye.